YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger episode 37. So, this was kind of your average run-of-the-mill filler episode. Honestly, not my favorite. The main plot revolved around a monster of the week that would effectively but it would animate trash that would attack its former owners for throwing it away, which was pretty funny. I mean, this episode had your par for the course Zenkaiger stuff, which is a funny premise that leads to some funny and unique fights on the ground in the mecha, for sure. You know, the idea of the trash being mad that it got thrown away, attacking the people. I mean, the episode was literally about trash attacking people, which is how I feel watching this show. I kid. And I think Vroon was the only one that got hit by the trash wave or whatever out of the main rangers, which leads to a unique roll call later. It's also wrapped up in this story about this little girl that, like, lost her doll because she threw it away. And, like, I'll be honest, I don't care. Speaking of trash, I don't care about Toku filler characters. I'll admit there was at least a nice beat with Flint where they tied it to a little bit of backstory about her, backstory-ish, about how she once threw something away that she regretted throwing away, and that's kind of was the purpose of the plot, was this girl threw away the doll that she regretted throwing away. They tied it in at least nicely to the filler plot, and I did like the moment with Flint because I do appreciate when we take a filler character story and tie it into one of our main characters rather than just teaching us all about this character we're never going to see again. But at the same time, the stuff we did with Flint was nothing of value. It didn't develop her character in any way, or I feel flesh it out in any meaningful way. It just kind of felt like a detail that was tacked on to fit with the plot. So while I appreciated it, I would have much rather had something more meaningful as far as development or fleshing out Flint's character. Also, going along with that, you have a little bit of stuff with the villains where Stacy's being put in charge of guarding the World Guardians, and he has this conversation with Tank Guy, and he's like, oh, you really seem to be enjoying working with that puppet. And he's like, he's not a puppet, he's a person, and his name is Hawkeizer. At the end of the episode, he says, well, now that Stacy's in charge of this, we can have other plans for Hawkeizer. So a little bit of that stuff goes on. During the fight with the monster, Zenkaiger tries to get through to his dad again, and he's like talking about, you're my dad, and all this stuff, and he's like, oh, that's the first time I'm hearing this since I'm not your dad, which was kind of funny. But the stuff with that felt a little repetitive for me. Like, I complain about this all the time, but I feel the Stacy's stories are spinning his wheels. And sort of the stuff with Stacy being friends with Hawkeizer and then Zenkaiger trying to convince his dad again felt like the exact same scenes we got in last week's episode, so that felt a little bit repetitive to me. We did renew a little bit of interest in the search for his mom, which we've kind of dropped off, because at the beginning of the episode, they just got back from Romance World, and they kind of address that a little bit, and then at the end they're like, oh, we're going to keep looking for her. And that's one thing I hate that Sentai will do sometimes, is they'll have a story like that, like a major story like looking for the mom, or like Juo Bird and Juoger, and they'll like just drop it for like 5-10 episodes, and you won't even hear a whiff of it at all. And then all of a sudden they'll pick it up again, and it's so disjointed. Like, you could have watched the last episode where they looked for the mom, and then skipped every episode until this one, and you wouldn't have missed anything. But I like that they're at least bringing that back. And it did get me thinking in this episode how, you know, one of the strengths, I guess, of Zenkaiger is that each episode is kind of unique with its monster of the week, as it brings kind of a funny gimmick for a unique fight all around. But at the same time, it gets kind of old. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny to see what they're going to come up with each week, but it's getting kind of repetitive. It's kind of like, when every episode's super, no episode is. I was thinking about the search for the mom and traveling to the different worlds, and I was thinking that could be a great way to make the show a little bit different. If after that arc where they found the mom happened, that instead of doing Monster of the Week stories in the city, we did Monster of the Week stories in the different worlds, and we were actually traveling to different worlds or something. Or maybe intermingle that. Some weeks have, like, Monster of the Week and then visit that world in a following week, just to change things up a little bit, and I think that could have been a cool ongoing plot device that can kind of keep your of the week stuff, but keeping it a little bit more fresh. Speaking of this week's gimmick, though, like, the funny stuff with it, with Vroom being piled on by trash, is that led to our unique roll call, with him being buried in trash in the roll call, and then you just see a little bubble of him during it. And then they use, like, the Magi Ranger powers, and it accidentally powers up the putties. Yes, I call them all putties. And then during the mecha fight, they use the Loop Hat one, which brings in a giant version of the grandmother to, like, serve food, which was pretty entertaining. We did use Zenroku Zenkaio, though, so we got our awesome-looking CG this week. And yeah, like I said, the episode just kind of ends with them resolving to continue to find the mom. So, like, it was a fine episode. It was par for the course stuff, but I really felt that outside of them bringing back up that they're looking for his mom still, it felt like a pretty unimportant episode that, like, I could have, like, skipped this and not missed anything. I would give this one a 2 out of 5. Like, I'm sure other people will like it, but this week I was just like, yeah, this episode's whatever. It's kind of just needless. Like, I don't need to watch this episode to understand what's going on. But what did you guys think of this episode? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for our videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.